Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Branding and the Beast. We are on season 2, episode 3. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're talking about a really pressing and timely topic within marketing and branding, and that's around the disability community and people with disabilities. I think it's one of the most pressing things we can talk about right now. So I'm really stoked to get into it. My name is Alicia Disantis,
I was going to say, for
founder
our
of.
first-time listeners, you want to tell them who you are?
Yeah, see, I'm so excited about talking about this that I'm just completely ignoring who I am.
It's all good.
Alicia Disantis, founder of 38th and Kip Studio. No nonsense, just good sense. And my co host.
Shaun Bernstein, all nonsense, of the Right Stuff Agency.
Love it. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Really excited about our speaker, our guest speaker today. I think it's going to be a very, very powerful episode. So, this is something that's really dear to both of us. The people with disabilities, that community, not just obvious visual disabilities, but people who also have the invisible disabilities. And, that you and I both suffer from. And how we are branded and how products and services for people with disabilities are branded. It seems like everything is progressed except this area.
You made an interesting point without probably realizing it is when you said the word suffer from, because I will preface this with I am not a stickler when it comes to the nuanced language around disability. I'm very open. People say what they want to say, and I get it. There are other folks, and I don't know what our guest position is because there's other folks who get very particular about the language. So not suffer from living with or this or that. It's an odd playground because disability is an umbrella that covers millions of people and with tens of hundreds of millions and with so many different spokes to it. So, lumping somebody with a hearing impairment like our guest today versus a visual impairment versus a learning disability versus a mobility challenge versus what have you under with one brush is complex to say the least. And everyone's got different needs and different desires and are different individuals. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, it really is. And the reason, so a little bit of backstory around our guest. I saw her present at Disrupt HR event in Denver. She had, the way this event is structured, she had 5 minutes to give her presentation, and her PowerPoint slides changed every 15 seconds automatically. So that was the whole format of this presentation. So there were 13 presenters over the course of several hours. I can't even imagine how challenging that would be to really have to get your presentation perfect and to end it in such a perfect time. And the slides literally go away. And they bring up the slide for the next presenter. So if you're standing there with the next presenter's name, it's kind of odd. So she presented on people with disabilities and uh, including them in your workplace and having a more inclusive environment. And what was really interesting, and one of the reasons I reached out to her and asked, you need to be on our show, is I think there were 12 presenters. And within those presentations, the same stock photography of people with disabilities was used just within the 12. If you go online and you look, there is hardly any stock photography of people with visible disabilities. They're just not, it's like not even part of the marketing conversation.
That's a really interesting point. I happen to have a good friend of my wife's who's a wheelchair user, and he actually models for an accessible fashion line that's been quite popular out here. And it's actually it's even she's made her way into the US. She's done phenomenally well. I've met the designer. She's really cool. But it's neat to sort of have talked to her and see the work that she does of, this is not, oh, look at me, I have a mobility issue, but I can still wear clothes. This is actually adaptive design to look really cool and trendy and, be as fashionable as anyone who's able bodied, but that can also accommodate some of the unique needs of those with mobility disabilities, for example, whether it's a wheelchair or a leg length discrepancy or missing limbs or what have you. But really done with a focus on inclusion into a broader mainstream trend rather than setting separate and apart. So that's been neat to watch.
Yeah, that's incredible. You have to send me the information on that. I'm really curious to see.
Happy to give. It's called IZ, or IZ for our American friends. IZ Adaptive. Her name's Izzy Camilleri, I believe. She's really neat. For the Canadians, she used to do all Gord Downey's designs. She did Gord Downey's hats for his tour. The Canadians will get what that means. Alicia's not cool enough, but she also was on. I don't know if you're a Queer Eye fan.
I
Queer
am.
Eye did a really famous episode with the fellow in the wheelchair who had been shot.
Mm-hmm.
She did all his
Mm-hmm.
clothes, and she's working with
Wow.
Wes now. So that's been a pretty cool project as well. But yeah, we can post the link to her work.
I love that. Yeah, it's really, it just strikes me as so, like I said before, everything has evolved, I feel like, except this immense, immense category of people, this very broad and very deep. I pulled some stats. 26% of Americans have a disability, and 22% of Canadians. That's so many people. It's the biggest group, the biggest minority of people in the world.
That's
And
already
yet,
tens of millions out in North America.
yes. And it just seems like anytime they're branded to, it's just these really kind of archaic, stereotypical uh, concepts. And then if you go into, like, the invisible disabilities, the anxiety, depression pills, the psoriasis pills, the Crohn's. Why are all the commercials someone like watercolor painting? And they're not painting, and then once they take the medicine, then they start painting again, and they feel good. And there's that like sappy music.
Well, and I wrote about this morning. I actually published an article about the topic that I think you read because, some people will have a change of their condition. They might get, quote, better. They might not. They might deteriorate over time. And for some people, it's just going to be a status quo. And it's just something that they live with. And so, folks get tired of, being asked how they are because you can have a disability and still be great. You can have good days and bad days. It really all depends. So, you look at that kind of treatment driven approach to making someone well again that doesn't always work in a lot of these situations. And so how do you market to someone who has those sort of different needs? It's outside of the model of, oh, something's broken and we're going to fix it, as I use air quotes on a video. That's not the case for a lot of people, and it's not a great
Yeah,
model.
yeah. I'm really interested to bring her in and get her perspective. I can't think of someone who's better positioned to talk about the very concept that this episode is about. Lori Frisher was born with severe hearing loss and relies on two cochlear implants and lip reading to communicate. She's never let this stand in the way of her success. She's a leader, best-selling author, two-time cancer survivor, Emmy nominee, and public speaker who dares to dream beyond the present circumstances. Her career started in New York City in advertising and sales, and her work eventually brought her to Denver to launch a social network for people with disabilities. She then went on to work with some of the largest U.S. telecom companies, but always had an entrepreneurial edge. Her current venture, Ready or Not Media, focuses on dismantling persistent negative stereotypes and advocating for people of all abilities to be included in today's workforce and communities. They take a proactive organizational role in championing workplace belonging by proactively leading with purpose. It's driven by empathy and heart. Basic things, basic human rights, basic human empathy and emotions. If you're ready, we can welcome her in.
I'm ready. Let's welcome her in.
Welcome back, everyone. We have our guest here, Lori Frisher. Thank you so much for joining us. We are just really, really excited to have you here to talk about uh, people with disabilities, the branding of those people, and then the branding of the services and products for this giant, giant community of people. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, little background on Lori. I was introduced to her at the Disrupt HR event in Denver, and her speaking was so powerful that I was compelled to reach out and say, "Hey, I saw you. You're incredible," and asked her to be on the show because this is episode 13. We've talked to quite a few people in quite a few different industries at this point, and it really seemed pressing to address this concept. That's people with disabilities. This community is so ignored, and so it seems like, as Shaun, as I said, everything's moving forward, and this whole area is just kind of left behind. It's not progressing at the same pace. So I'm so happy to have you on to talk about your experience with some of this stuff and what we can do to make things better and to shed some light and awareness on this lack of representation and really antiquated branding.
Well, it's definitely a market that needs to be seen and heard. So the opportunity starts now with engagement with people like yourselves who want to bring that curiosity and empathy to others who are listening and who are watching.
So, Lori, your background, I'm interested in knowing how this came to pass for you to found Ready or Not Media. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be in this place?
Ready or Not Media was so timely, especially after COVID. A lot of us were asking the question, are we ready or not to take the next step to doing something different? And it's all impacted us differently. And for me personally, Ready or Not Media was something that I believe was my calling in my life to do as a representative of this community, as a woman with a disability and having grown up wearing hearing aids my whole life and now wearing two cochlear implants, I felt that the power of my voice needed to be heard. And as you know, I've spent my whole entire life having to listen hard and, really having a responsibility to pay attention. And now with Ready or Not Media, I am bringing this to organizations and companies to start thinking about bringing empathy and engagement in their organization, to start having conversations that they would never have around the disability marketplace, and also to start thinking about how this can impact their organizations and their cultures by everything from development of products and services to creating an experience and a sense of belonging in cultures, to start hiring people with disabilities, to start tapping into the largest pool of untapped people and individuals that are making incredible strides in their life and that can be incredible assets and problem solvers in organizations.
Now, DEI is a bit of a hot topic in workplaces. I mean, I'm in Canada and the US, obviously, as well, but the D can be silent sometimes. It's sort of, we talk about all sorts of equity initiatives, and that's great. Don't get me wrong for a moment, but the disability portion of things often kind of, is either, I hate to say, lip service, or is sort of left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. Why do you think that is? Why is the awareness just not there like it needs to be?
Shaun, I think a lot of people are starting to understand the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we've kind of had to take those steps in explaining it through these different ESGs, ERGs in companies. And I think a lot of people don't understand that disability affects all of those different areas and segments, everything from race, gender, sexual orientation. And it speaks to everybody, especially with the aging segment. This should be considered as part of their initiatives. And I think that until they get into that conversation and create that conversation in organization, they'll start understanding the importance of it. So if people like myself, people who are experiencing disability and lack of access, that can bring that out to organizations. People do not know what they don't know until you have a conversation. So, when we look at leaders that are out there advocating, I know that once they hear about the things that can improve their organizations and their cultures, they'll start tapping into this market and understand the importance of access and accessibility in organizations.
And that's a really great point of you don't know what you don't know. And I'm actually really, I'm shook by that, just how that's just seems so just kind of on the mark exactly with what people are experiencing. Um, I I'm interested in knowing what are some common stereotypes you've experienced or you're seeing within this community that it's so deep and so varied and so many people. What are some things that you've seen uh, that are common generalizations or stereotypes?
I think everyone experiences stereotypes every single day, no matter whether they're disabled or not. And I think that it's not even so much ignorance, it's not being aware and not taking into account who is around them. You just never know who you're talking to. And people, if they lead with empathy in every aspect of their life, there will be no discrimination and no judgment of character. So it's not looking at people and saying, all right, well, this person was treated differently and that person was treated differently. We're all more alike than different. So I think that is what we have to keep in mind. I know that when I am out there and I'm talking to people about everything through, whether it's through our events or immersive experiences and watching people share their experiences and their personal experiences where they've been touched by disability in their life, whether it's through an aging parent or a child or having an accident and a situation that created that self-awareness, but also the greater awareness of what they experience in the day-to-day, personal and professional.
When one of the things that struck me most about your presentation was when you shared that story about the woman at the gate at the airport, and they were calling to board, and they thought what she was drunk, that she didn't board in time, or I don't remember the exact details, but that was really interesting to me and really eye opening.
Well, it's a lack of awareness, lack of empathy, just assuming someone, that they're intoxicated when they have, in fact, whether it's a hearing loss or speech impediment. People have to take a moment and ask questions before making assumptions. And I think, that experience that I shared was the truth. You just never judge a book by its cover, is exactly what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Communication, talk to people, get to know people, ask questions, have a conversation.
Lori, we can probably spend all day, bad mouthing brands that are doing such a bad job of disability inclusion or disability recognition. Let's flip that script for a second. What are some brands, in your view, that are actually doing it well, that are doing it right, that are really kind of, calling attention to this population and welcoming them, making them feel included?
Well, I think a lot of us can all say Apple is doing great things. We talk about universal design in branding, and it's really important to create products that speak to all people. And you could still represent the community of people with disabilities. And Apple has done an incredible job. I don't know if you've seen the ad for a commercial that they've had called The Greatest. And they have different disabilities represented throughout the commercial spot. And it really taps into what each disability is using, different forms of the application that they provide. So you see that, Siri is really everybody's friend, most people's friend. Alexa is most people's friend. So when you talk about leaders, we talk about Microsoft leading, we talk about Google leading, we talk about, people like that own companies, that represent people with disabilities. Like there's a clothing line that two blind brothers created, and it's amazing. They have braille on their clothing, and they have a campaign that is called Shop Blind. So people can experience what they experience on an everyday basis. Shopping, and what is the experience like, and trying to provide those experiences through branding and advertising. We talk about companies like Deloitte, Accenture. They're hiring people with disabilities. So each company is serving a different purpose, which is great. What we would like to see is companies leading where they're doing all the above. They're hiring, they're creating products and services, they're practicing what they preach.
I want to jump in with a follow up to that because you talk about hiring and hiring with disabilities, and the laws are fairly strict in Canada about hiring requirements and really trying to sort of push that. What are some of the assets that you find, in your view, that people with disabilities can bring to a workplace, and some of the sort of, and it's we talked about it in the intro, it's such a broad brush. No two individuals are the same, no two individuals' needs are the same. But in very generally speaking, what are some of the things you find that can really be assets in the workplace?
I think hiring a person with a disability is the biggest asset. I think people are looking at it like it's going to be a liability. Yes, it can be a liability when you're not paying attention, but it's also an asset. And why is it an asset? It's an asset because people with disabilities have had to navigate a world that was not built for them. They have had to navigate through life trying to figure it out. They are the greatest problem solvers. So for an organization hiring, that is something that they could really consider as the best hire they could possibly have. If they are asking the right questions to these individuals that are either applying for a job and they have certain needs that need to be met and certain accommodations that need to happen, they can be the resource itself to make that organization go to the next level on so many areas, whether it's productivity or whether it's loyalty, and creating that sustainability in a company to connect with not only their own employees but also their consumers and their clients.
I love that. And on that note, what, because Shaun and we are advocates of, people with disabilities, and we have what we call the invisible disabilities, and we had talked. Shaun had talked with you about Shaun's acquaintance who has Crohn's disease, and things like that, anxiety, depression, so many different types of disabilities throughout the world. What are some things that we all can do and listeners can do to help break down these stereotypes. Because, sometimes it can feel so overwhelming that people don't know what to do and don't know where to start. Do you have any recommendations of what anyone who cares about this can do to break down these antiquated stereotypes?
It starts with a conversation. It starts with saying hello. It's really as simple as that. And we have a tendency of assuming that it's hard for someone to relate or communicate. We're smarter than you think. And again, we're all more alike than different. So we all have commonalities with each other, even though we may be different from one another. So the stereotypes start with branding, they start with advertising, they start with getting into boardrooms and having real conversations and unveiling the attitudes and changing the mindsets of our leaders to start thinking about being inclusive and accessible in organizations. It starts there. It starts at home. It starts in schools where children become more aware of love, acceptance, and empathy with each other. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of just saying hello and not being afraid to talk to someone who maybe looks or seems a little bit different than you. It's like it's 2023 and we still struggle with this so much. It's utterly bizarre to me.
I think people are curious more than afraid, and they don't know how to bridge that curiosity.
So, what would you say to a business owner a small business owner who wants to start uh, representing people with disabilities in their marketing more, on their website, having a more inclusive uh, brand around their services, and they don't know where to start? They don't want to just go and search for person in a wheelchair in Adobe stock and just find the first one that pops up. What would you recommend that they do as the first few steps?
Leaders, employees of organizations are doing a lot by asking people to participate, to ask the questions: is anyone in the organization affected by the community? Ask those questions to your own. Also, open up to have focus groups and engagement with communities, all different communities, not just people with mobility impairments, hearing impairments, or visual impairments, but invisible disabilities, to start the conversation with one another. And you can get to know individuals so well when you are having those open um, points of dialogue. And they are your best advocates. Those are the people that you want to give you direction to what your consumers are looking for, what speaks to them, what their families and their caretakers need. It's not just people with disabilities that we're speaking to when we're creating brands. It's people that are connected to those that may have a disability, who are your, customers too. So I always say that 1-3-5 method. You affect one, you affect three, you affect five, and it's just viral that you take care of one, you're definitely going to get the other to come in and support. So I'd say having, that dialogue with the community itself, and not just picking talent because they're in a chair. Get to know them, or that they have a hearing impairment. Get to know them. There are a lot of creative individuals out there that have a lot to contribute and a lot to say.
I love that. Thank you.
I want to throw one more question into the mix, if that's all right. We talked in the intro, personally, as someone with a disability, and as a writer, funny enough, I'm not fussed with the language that people use. I know that everyone has different terms that they prefer. But what advice do you give to a brand that's really made a misstep? That either has miscalculated or taken a wrong approach and is really getting heat for either a lack of inclusion or just poor representation and wants to do better. um, what do you recommend in those situations?
Brands speak to people. And when we're targeting to people like us who have disabilities and we are using our technology in ads, it could be a wheelchair that is an old looking wheelchair, something that looks like it came out of a hospital in the 1920s, that that is the not the look of what you want to associate your brand with. It's being modern and timely to technology that we are using today. And it goes back to having that dialogue and conversations and really getting to know the person and their needs, just rather than assuming and going online and getting some data. When we are face to face with our own and the community, we can find out a lot. So it's just simple best practice to do that before launching a campaign, or whether it's a commercial, whether it's a print ad, whatever the case may be, is really dive deep into getting to know who you are representing.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
There,
Thank you.
there's so much research. Shaun's a writer. I'm a writer. Branding, all that stuff. There's so much research that goes in to marketing campaigns and plans and all these things. But then it seems like sometimes the most obvious thing is the one that's least researched. It's like, oh yeah, we'll take our best guess at this, and then it comes out, and not relevant. It's old fashioned. It's untimely. It's downright disrespectful. So it's always so interesting to me how the thing that seems the most obvious sometimes with marketers, like, oh, we want to feature a person with a disability. Let's just guess at what they're experiencing. Why do you not go talk to, like you said, Lori, a focus group, or do some additional research? This is so strange, the psychology behind that, of why we don't actively research that, but we research everything else.
It's ignorance is the ultimate disability.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
You can find Radio Not Media on Instagram at Radio Not Media, or you can go to our website at radionotmedia.com and contact us and learn more about the products and services that we offer to companies, the consulting we do, the events we do, the immersive training and coaching that we offer organizations, big, small. So you can definitely find us online.
Thank you so much. We so appreciate your time. It's been so great to have you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Delightful.
Lori.
Thank you so much. Keep spreading empathy. Take care.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Oh, what a great guest. That was a really tremendous segment. I'm so glad she took the time to talk with us.
She's so good and she's so sharp and so in the know about these issues. Thank you for finding her.
You're welcome. I was really serendipitous. And what I really love about her is that she doesn't have like a aggressive stance or anything. She's welcoming, and her whole concept is around, just talk to people. And that blows my mind. Like something so simple, is how you brand something. You talk to people and have it be a representation of them. Why is that so difficult in this community?
and that the way to break down ignorance is communication. That's so vitally important, and it sounds so simple, it's almost pithy, but it's not. It's everything.
Yeah. And she references Apple, and that's interesting to me because Apple, they're huge, and everyone seems to talk about Apple when you say, give a recommendation or what company do you follow or whatever. It's always Apple. But within this context, they are really doing things, and I know what commercial she's referring to, and it I think it really is a north star for a lot of companies that want to include people with disabilities in their branding and marketing.
They also, to their credit, put their money where their mouth is, and they design a lot of products with a very inclusive design. And I think, have from the beginning, but, you see people with all varieties of communication and speech issues fluidly using iPads, from toddlers learning to speak to people who are no longer verbal to all sorts. And they've really done it with an eye towards making it accessible. So credit, that's, is it a perfect company? No, but credit where it's due.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, the big takeaway from this, when we pose the question, what can we all do to make things better? What can we all do to include this big group of people, the biggest minority in the world? We simply talk to them and we learn and we take as what information we can and transfer that to our marketing and our branding and our writing and not assume anything like any traditional marketing method. You just don't assume. Go to the actual person and talk to them.
It's such great advice, and I'm grateful that we had her on. I think it's great for our listeners. Uh, I am gonna do my first sign off because you're hosting this one. So I will say that I am Shaun Bernstein of the Right Stuff Agency. All nonsense, but also a whole lot of storytelling. So then you can be, the no nonsense host of this one. I'll give you that baton.
Oh my goodness. And I am Alicia Disantis, founder of 38th and Kip Studio. You can find me at 38thandkip.com. You can find me if you Google 38th and Kip Studio. That's 38th and Kip, KIP, all over the internet. So is my co-host at the Right Stuff Agency.
WRITE, because again, I'm all nonsense.
Oh my goodness, we're having too much fun with this. All right. To all of our listeners and watchers, thank you again for joining us. We hope you find this series valuable. We appreciate you spending your time and energy listening and talking, and you maybe talking to us and watching us. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.